about to get underway for our Wednesday morning live stream painting session, and it should be a bit of fun. So just stand by while I get the cameras set up. G'day people on YouTube, welcome. So while I'm just getting set up, let us know whereabouts you are dialing in from and what time of day it is there, so that we can plan for future workshops and live streams. I've just got to get myself set up here. And today we are going to be doing a acrylic painting. It should be a bit of fun. All right. G'day folks, welcome. Hope you're all doing well. I'm a little bit unorganised this morning, so forgive me. Howdy. For those who are joining us for the first time, my name's Rod, Learn to Paint Academy. This is our Wednesday morning live stream session, and where we're going to do some painting and hopefully have a bit of fun. So welcome everyone. So just while we're getting set up and waiting for people to come on board, let us know where you're calling in from, what time of day it is there, and that helps us with our planning. G'day Steve Dickens. Steve, I think you're in WA, aren't you? I think, from memory. Rosalie, good morning. Good morning from Dargo High Plains. Yes, absolutely. John's in Taiwan at 7:05 a.m. Nice and early. So welcome everyone. Now if you stick around towards the end, I'll give you a link. I'll put it up on the screen where if you're joining us for the first time, you'll be able to go and get access to a free course that we have at the Learn to Paint Academy, which walks you through how to get started painting. So stick around to the end and I'll give you that link at the end there. Hi Anne. 4 minutes past midnight in Ireland. That's dedication, Anne. Either that or you can't sleep. But welcome. Glad to have you here. Carol, New Zealand. G'day. Noontime in New Zealand. Sandra says it's 10 a.m. in central Victoria. Very good. So you guys are all an hour ahead of us now, which is good. Good morning, Gladys in Ontario. Gladys is watching over on YouTube. And Gwen, 7005 in South Carolina. 7 p.m. in South Carolina. And I think you guys are on the East Coast, I think. Anne Dawes, good morning from Perth. Welcome, Anne. Good to see you. All right. Now what we're going to do today is... Morning, Barb. Morning, Heather. Good to see you both. We're going to do some painting. Now, you may recall that I've been working on a little series and I've been doing some studies for that, right? So this is the one we did, I think we did this last week. Sort of a semi-abstract, contemporary sort of landscape type scene. And then I started playing around during the week with more of a mixed media. This is on paper. Playing around with different ideas, and I'm using oil pastels in that, just to experiment with different things. So I'm going to do something similar. I've got some of this multimedia paper up here, and again, just going to play around with ideas today. There's no photo reference, and it's going to just be really about exploring acrylic medium, and we might use some of the oil pastels as well. And and I'm just gathering material for a body of work that I'm doing on riverbeds and erosion and so on. So that's what we're going to do today. G'day Jerry McLeod, welcome. G'day Colin. Colin, thanks for sending those photos through, mate. I haven't had a chance to have a good look at them, but I thought I'd ask, with your permission, if we might do one of those next week on our live stream possibly. So let me know if you're okay with that. Hi Marie, welcome. Jerry, g'day. G'day. Hey Rita. Virginia, very good. All right, let us get underway, hey? Let us get underway. What am I doing? No idea. Okay, so come down to our palette cam here. Hopefully you all saw the video that I did this week of how to make your own stay wet palette. If you haven't, drop by the learntopaint.online website and have a look under the blog section. Super simple to make. So I'm just going to wet this paper towel here. I probably should have, oh no, it's getting wet. But this worked really well, and it's good because my acrylics normally dry out so fast. And this is a cheap, simple, easy solution, right? Just a bit of baking paper and some paint. So I'm going to use the Acrylic interactive paints here today. And I'll just pop some on here. And the great thing about this palette is that it just keeps the paint hydrated. And I've been playing around with it, and I like it as a solution because I can come back in an hour's time, 2 hours time, and this paint is still wet. It just means I'm not wasting paint like I used to, and all my mixes are still there, so I can come back and add another layer to a painting. Now, for those of you who've been with me for a while, you'll know I've got French ultramarine blue, permanent alizarin crimson, yellow ochre, and I've run out of cadmium yellow light. So I'm using cadmium yellow deep, something a little bit different, and some titanium white. Super simple. And I've also got, I bought these at the $2 shop, right? These are Montmartre oil pastels. I've been playing around with those. I'm not entirely convinced that I'll do a lot of painting with those, but a bit of painting possibly. And they've been a bit of fun. So that is what we're going to do. All right, where are we up to? G'day Marg, welcome up north there. Kimoko, welcome. Thanks Colin, appreciate that mate. We will have a go at doing one of those. Morning Linda. All right, so let us find where we're up to here. So I've just got some of this multimedia paper here, and I've taped it to the board. And I'm going to do something along the lines of what we did last week, because as I said, I'm just, something along those lines, just trying to feel out some ideas for this new series that I'm working on. So I hope that's okay with you guys. So it won't be strictly the Moore method of painting, like we might normally do. But it will still be sort of. I'll just wet all that just to make sure it's all okay. So, feel free to ask me questions as we go, because the reason why I do these is really for you guys. Okay, I want to help you out, and having the opportunity to interact, I think, is what an age we live in. Yeah, we can have people tuning in from all around the world, all different time zones, and ask any questions you want. Never been a better time than right now. Okay, so I'm going to try something slightly different with the composition, because I've been doing these ones with a high horizon line, but I might just run that horizon line on more of an angle like that. And I like the idea of these sort of trees on the river embankment. So maybe we put something like that, and change the angle. So I've got one going that way, so I need something coming maybe down that way, and something there like so. So what is your most pressing question about painting? Today is a good opportunity for you to ask that question, right? So if we were doing strictly the Moore method of painting, then what I've just done really would be kind of step one of the Moore method of painting, where we draw in some big shapes, right? What I've got here is the top of the river embankment there. So that's all one shape in there. Got the shape of the tree, shape of the sky, and then I'm going to have something down the bottom here, maybe a dry riverbed. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and this little shrub or bushes there, 5. And I put that in just so that if the eye is running down this angle, that it doesn't shoot straight out of the picture, right? I want to keep the eye in the picture. So that's a compositional sort of device. G'day Beverly. And we probably need to do a session on composition, I feel. Let me know yes in the comments if you think we should. But I definitely feel that would be helpful. So I've got a basic composition happening, right? And again, this is going to be contemporary landscape. It's going to be somewhat abstract. I'm not going for direct representation or sort of painting here today. You can see how that water, it sort of soaks through this baking paper, but it kind of also sits on top. So it feels slightly different. It takes a little bit, you get used to the feel of it. However, I think it's such a great cost-effective solution. If you haven't seen the video that I posted yesterday, I highly recommend. If you're painting in acrylics, highly recommend it. Okay, so what do we do next? What do we do next? Yes, what are you all saying yes to? Something I must have said a moment ago. Oh, about composition. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. All right, well, let's do that. We'll definitely do that. Yes, composition tips will be helpful. Okay, cool. I'm catching back up now. Okay, so one quick thing I wanted to talk to you about is having a dominant color scheme in a painting. And again, this is something I haven't really talked about, but we probably should, right? So if you have a look here, the dominant sort of color scheme in here is red and yellow, which obviously makes orange, right? So this red, yellow, orange combination is the dominant color here. And the blue would be the complement of that, yeah? So that means we've got this kind of blue as an accent color to the dominant, tone of the overall painting. And so this series that I'm doing, which is contemporary landscape series, that's what I'm working on, is using a dominant color scheme of reds and yellows and the orange in between, earthy tones, right? And the blue being the accent color. And it just so happens that, the subject matter lends itself beautifully to that color scheme. But you think about it, if you're doing traditional landscapes, you're using blue and yellow and green, right? A lot of green. So that the blue, green, yellow spectrum of the color wheel is the dominant color scheme of a traditional sort of landscape. Red becomes an accent color to that. So we want to try and avoid having equal proportions of all three primaries and all three secondaries in there, because it just won't be visually as appealing, right? But if you have a dominant color scheme, then you'll make more impactful paintings. Hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, let me know. And somebody commented the other day on my YouTube channel that I made the mention of using water and using hog hair bristle brushes in water, and that they, the hog hair bristle brushes don't like water, which is true, they don't. If you leave them sitting in the water, then they don't like that. You can see how all the hairs are all sprayed out there, right? Does that mean this brush is no good? Or is this brush, in fact, perfect for different applications? Don't throw your old crusty brushes out, is what I'm trying to say, because that makes just such a great brush for blocking in colour. Okay, which is what we're going to do now. So I don't mind, to be honest, if the brush has got a bit crusty. Okay. So get some darks happening down the bottom. Now I know some people want their brushes to be perfect and everything, but I kind of like crusty brushes because you can get nice feathery edges and so on from them. Thanks, John. Glad somebody watched it. G'day, Sharon. Hello. Hi, Lisa. Adrienne. Hello. How are you? Good to see you all. And g'day to everyone who's joined us on YouTube as well, and Periscope and Twitch. Okay, so I get some darker tones down the bottom. because I can't have the entire riverbank here all the same tone, can I? So we need to have a mix of tones. So I'm going to have some cooler, darker tones down the bottom, and then up towards the I'm just mixing red and yellow with a bit of white. Right? I've got a couple of different yellows there, so we can get some variation. So up the top here, we're going to have these brighter, earthy tones up here, right? And because I'm using paper, it actually feels very different. This is a multimedia paper that I'm using. It feels very different from painting on canvas. But I'm only using it because I just want to do some little sketchy type paintings that I can then, I'm going to do as many of these as I can, and the ones that seem to be working, that I'm liking, will become reference material for larger paintings. So in the absence of having photos, I'm just making them up, right? I'm making up my own reference material here. Shape that tree up a little bit better. Now the one thing I did notice though with painting on this paper is that it does dry a bit darker. Now I know acrylics dry darker anyway, but it did dry a bit darker than what it appears to do with acrylic, with stretch canvas. Darken that up a little bit. I'll take a little bit of that dark tone, mix that into the colour there. When you've got a large area like this in the shape, it's important that you keep changing up the tone and shifting it, right? All right, it's starting to come together a little bit there. So feel free to ask me any questions. So I love questions. Okay, so a little bit of a sandy embankment along this riverbed here. And what I'll do is, this is my darks, oranges, reds brush, right? So what I'll do is I'll grab another brush, another crusty old bristle hair brush, all splayed open like that, that's okay. A little touch of water, and I'll use this now for my blues, my cooler tones. Let me know if everything's making sense so far. Or do I need to explain any part of it in a bit more detail? Okay. I don't mind if I lose those tree branches and things in there at this stage. So one thing I've got to keep in mind, this might sound a bit weird, is that even though I've got my Stay Wet palette working beautifully, it's keeping my paints wet down here, they're still drying fast up on the paper. And I did notice that they do dry pretty fast actually with this multimedia paper, more so than the canvas. So I've got to be mindful of that. Now of course I could use a retarder, but I try not to use too many mediums if I can, just to keep the process simple. And I can't really spray this paper either, I don't believe, with the spray bottle like I might if it was canvas. But that's okay, because again, we're only just creating a study here, which will hopefully turn into a larger work, a finished work. Pull a little bit of that earth tone up into the sky. Very good. All right. Colin, I like crusty old brushes because they're a bit like me. Yep, that's exactly how I feel, Colin. John says they give awesome texture, and I do that with my Chinese brushes. I use the cheap ones as well, yeah. Cheaper the better, yeah. And so the brushes that I'm using, these are cheap ones, a couple of bucks. Some people tend to disagree with me about using cheap brushes. Good morning, Anne. First time watching, welcome. Glad you could join us, Anne. And anyone else, if it is your first time, Linda saying ditto first time, so welcome, Linda. If it is your first time, stick around to the end because I'm going to give you a link for a free video course that we have at the Learn to Paint Academy. So watch out for that at the end, but welcome. I'm glad you've been able to join us. Jimmy Rogers, he was an old blues musician, wasn't he, Jimmy Rogers? Good day to you too, my friend, in Auckland, New Zealand. Debbie says, I find acrylics frustrating as it dries so fast. Yeah, it can be. Especially on paper like this. This is going to be dry real soon. But the palette that I'm using here, Debbie, I don't know if you caught us earlier on, but I made my own little stay wet palette, so it's staying wet down on the mixing area. It's just what's going up on the canvas is going to dry fast. But that's okay, because that actually can be an advantage with acrylics as well. But as long as the palette stays wet, that's probably my main thing. So I did a video on that yesterday. Have a look on the learntopaint.online blog. All right. Kamako says, I love the idea of mixed media. I'm glad to hear you're going to use some oil pastels. Yeah, hopefully this will dry in time for me to be able to use that for some details and accents. Colin says he has some Exy ones as well. Yeah, I've got a collection of oil painting brushes that cost me a living fortune, but I use them occasionally. So this is what we call a strategic pause right now, because I'm letting things dry off on the painting here a little bit, just a little bit. Linda says, could a damp cloth be used behind the canvas? Well, this is not actually a canvas, this is acrylic paper, so probably not. I wouldn't use a damp cloth with a stretched canvas. What I tend to use is a squirty water bottle, and those who have been on our live streams here a bit, especially during the warmer months, will see me using the squirty bottles. So, but your question about a damp cloth, if you come down here to my wet palette, you could absolutely, all I've done is I've got paper towel here, right? This is paper towel, regular old paper towel. I've just put 3 or 4 layers of that, and I've just wet the paper towel. I put baking paper. So you could use a cloth or a sponge instead of the paper towel. I like the paper towel and baking paper because A, it's cheap, and B, when I've finished with it, I just roll it up and put it in the bin. I'm just left with my plastic tray. How good is that? All right. So, good question though, Linda, thank you. Alrighty, where are we up to? Let us put in a, do we want to have a little bit of leftover water here? Maybe we do. I'll mix up a murky sort of colour. We'll just try that. So maybe there is a little bit of, oh, that's pretty grey, isn't it? It's a bit dismal. Get a bit more blue into that. Maybe we indicate that there's a little bit of water left in this river. You can see that that's getting dry. Certainly that dark is dry already. And one of the challenges with the paper is it is buckling a little bit with the water, but just ignore it, right? If we pop indication of water there, and we get some dark happening, because what we could then do is just indicate that tree and some of these bushes in here. Now, I want to just stress that I'm doing this in a sort of an abstract, very loose way. I'm not trying to do a finished painting here. I'm really just experimenting with composition, and this is just really a study for some larger paintings. So if it looks like I'm just slapping paint down, it's because I am. I'm not actually trying to do a finished frameable painting here. It's more of a reference that I'm trying to create. That's a bit thick, but it's okay. I'll just paint some more sky over it. And for those who maybe are new, just joining us, what I'm working on at the moment is a series of paintings which I'm going to do a virtual online exhibition of, which is all about, well, it's really it's a statement about environmental issues is what it's going to be. But it's going to be represented through riverbanks and the erosion of the soil and the exposure of the roots. And the deeper meaning behind that is the erosion of our respect for the land and how we treat the land and how we don't give enough concern to thinking about the future generations and so on. So that's what the sort of deeper meaning is going to be. I like being deep and meaningful, so suits my personality. A little bit of finger painting. I don't know if you guys have listened to my podcast that I did my second episode yesterday, I think it was, or the day before. I lose track of time. The podcast is called The Artist's Soul, and again you'll find that over at the learntopaint.online website. And the podcast is aimed at people who want to take their art career to a higher level rather than just be a hobby artist. So it's not for everyone. But in that podcast I reference a young lady by the name of Iris Scott. Hands up if you've heard of Iris Scott. Let me know yes if you've heard of the artist Iris Scott. John says, I have used water on my paper pieces, but you have to apply carefully. I prefer, like you, keeping the acrylics wet on the palette. Yep, good tip, John. Sandra says, I love that. Thank you. I'm not sure entirely which bit, but thank you. G'day, Julie Chadwick. Saw your photo down at Skinner's Creek this morning, Julie. Hope they got that fire under control. Great theme. Thanks, Colin. Yeah, I like the theme and the subject, and like your comment the other day, like having more of a spiritual sort of component to it as well. Gail says, the Darling looked terrible when I was visiting. Yeah, I think a lot of our river systems and landscape is suffering. So anyway, the artist Iris Scott, if you haven't seen her, go and check her out. But I talk about... G'day Jimmy, first time watching live but been watching most of your videos. Thanks mate, appreciate that. Stick around and I'll give you that link to our free video course as well. Debbie says, cool idea on the palette. It certainly is. Salah Mushin, hi from Iraq. G'day over in Iraq. I think we've got people from Saudi Arabia, but it's great to have Iraq coming on board as well. Anne says it's coming together nicely. Thank you, Anne. I appreciate your confidence. But anyway, what was I saying? Oh, Iris Scott. And the reason why I was talking about Iris Scott was because I was doing some finger painting, right? So Iris started doing finger painting paintings. Don't do that in traditional oils, but I think she used acrylic. And she started to share them on Facebook. And people started asking her how much, can I buy these paintings? And she started out, which is what I recommend to people who want to start selling, started out at the bottom of the ladder, right? She started selling them for $30, $40, $50. And she sold everything. And since then, today her paintings sell for $20,000, $30,000. Now, obviously, that's not everyone's going to have the same journey, but I think if you are an artist who wants to go beyond just being a hobby artist, well, there's a couple of things you should do. You should definitely listen to my podcast, The Artist's Soul, right? But you should open your mind up to different approaches beyond the traditional approaches, because we live in an age today where anything's possible. Greatest time in history right now for artists. You just got to know that and believe it, because it's the truth. It's never been better for artists than right now. From every aspect, learning to paint. I mean, go back 10 years ago, what we're doing right now I don't know if you've thought this through, but what we're doing right now, live stream painting, it would have cost 100 grand to get all the equipment to do that 10 years ago. So therefore it would have cost you guys a lot of money to watch it, right? Doesn't get much cheaper than free. So it is the greatest time in history for artists. That's why I join every online program for learning to paint that I find that makes sense for where I'm at right now. I join it because if I learn one or two things, then it's worthwhile, yeah? So I've just got in the habit of saying yes to things. All right. So the great thing about this paper, as I said, the underpainting there now is mostly dry. There's a couple of little wet spots, but I can just smudge those out. So we can start to build up some nice textured effects. And I want to create a really, the feel of a really baking hot day. The earth is suffering because of the climate conditions. Sandra says, love the whole paint slapping on abstract. That's my specialty at the moment, Sandra. All right, we're going okay, yeah? Let me just have a sip of my tea. And I like all this broken colour in here and this sort of earthy feel to it. In fact, I'm not going to mess with it too much more than that. What I probably want is some punchier orange accents in there. Remember I had that diagonal running back this way? So just to counterbalance that diagonal there, we've got this vertical, and we've got this horizontal. So it kind of felt to me like we needed to have another sort of diagonal running down this way. And I put that tree there to stop the eye running down this diagonal and out of the painting. So you've got to think about how's that eye going to move through this picture. What's the tracking of the eye? And it will run down lines like that. I'll just put a little bit of a highlight on there to accent that. And see how by just a shift in the tone, I've got a darker red in there, and I put this lighter tone there, and it just creates that separation, makes it sort of pop out. Colin says it's looking good so far. Thank you, Colin. Heather, I love using the palette knife. Yeah, it does. It gives really, really nice texture. You're right. It's certainly been something I've enjoyed using for sure. Now, the only thing with the paper that I'm using is it doesn't lend itself to scratching back the paint that well. That's okay. All right. Let us get in a bit of blue, a bit of this yellow. A pin of the red. I probably need to tape this baking paper down so that it stays tight, because it's just a little bit tricky at times. Try and create some interesting shapes, but leave some of that dark to come through as well. And I think we probably need couple of little bits and pieces there. a little bit of that green into there. All right. So this is where I've been playing around with these oil pastels. Now I bought these from the $2 shop. They're a Montmartre brand. And I've just been using them just to, they're a little bit harsh, so you got to just use them in the right way, I guess, which I haven't learnt what the right way is yet. I've just sort of been fooling around more than anything. And you know what made me start to fool around with these was I saw, so that's a bit wet there, so I can't really use that. I just saw other artists, you know, more contemporary sort of landscape artists, and I thought, well, you know, that's something I haven't done. I haven't tried that. I need to give that a try, right? So, because I'm a great believer in experimenting and learning new things. You know, that doesn't mean I just drop everything I've been doing, like the Moore method. No, not at all. I try new things and see what I can incorporate. And where possible, I'll incorporate them. But if it doesn't work, what have I lost? Nothing. I've gained some new knowledge. That can only be a good thing for artists, right? So try and avoid getting stuck in doing the same old thing over and over. Just repeating every painting is the same painting as the one before. I don't think that's a good idea. That's just my opinion. Kimoko saying it's such a big difference putting that last angle in. Yeah, and it breaks up this mass, doesn't it? Without that line coming back that way, it would just be a big solid mass, which would be too much, right? So yeah, it definitely makes a difference there for sure. Nice pick up there, Kimoko. June, I am in Canada just wondering what baking paper might be called. Now, I think it's called parchment paper in the US and Canada. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. But if you go and have a look, June, on the learn2paint.online website and then go to the blog section, I recorded the whole video on how to put it together yesterday. And you might find that helpful and of value to you. So yeah, go and check it out. Now, it's easy to overdo this sort of scratching in with the pastels, I imagine. Heather says, Mungio makes some nice, affordable soft oil pastels as well as water-soluble oil pastels. Ah, interesting. Wonder where you get those. Could you let us know where you buy those, Heather? That'd be great. No worries, June. All right. Debbie says, I like it. Thanks, Debbie. It looks hot and parched because of the texture and colours. Thanks, Gladys. That's what I'm really going for, just to try and create that sort of consistency in the subjects. This is the first one that I did on paper. So you can see it dries out a bit muted. Yeah, so that's the sort of look and feel I'm going for. So I'm glad it's coming across that way. Thanks, Gladys. Linda says, I can almost feel the heat here. How many colours do you usually confine yourself to, particularly in a landscape? Linda, let me pop this up now. What we teach at the Learn to Paint Academy, Linda, and for anyone else who is new, let me just pop those down, is we've been teaching at the Learn to Paint Academy beginners to intermediate. We've taught 30,000 students now through the Learn to Paint Academy. And the way we teach is to simplify everything right down, right? So you'll see on my palette here that I've got the ultramarine blue, permanent alizarin crimson, and yellow ochre. That's my standard basic landscape palette. And then to that we add some booster colors like a light yellow usually, and obviously titanium white. So 3 colors is what I teach. The primary colors, blue, red, and yellow, right? don't overcomplicate it when you're starting out, because most beginners, they go and buy 35 different colors from the art store, and then they come home and they don't really know how to mix any of it, and what to do, so they end up mixing mud, right, rather than clean colors. Pardon me. So that's how we start out teaching you, is to use a very basic palette, and then you can add other colors to it as you learn how to mix those colors and get the most out of that basic palette, right? So that's our approach. And if you want to learn more, head on over here, www.learntopaint.info. Register for our free course. We teach you everything about the Moore method of painting, and there's 4 different painting demonstrations that go into a bit more detail. So go and check that out. All right. Pardon me, talking too much. All right, good questions though. Okay, Kamako says June says she loves the painting. Thank you, June. Kamako, pastel looks good. Yeah, I think little accents, little details and things in there. You've got to try and remember, we're trying to capture a sense of the Australian landscape in the bush without putting details in there. I want to keep it abstract more than on the realism side, you know, so semi-abstract. So some of these little marks, they're nothing but marks, but they can tell a story, right? And that's what I'm sort of working towards. Christy, would you use the oil pastels with acrylics too? Or, yeah, this is acrylic paint that I'm using here today. I think they probably work with both acrylic and oil, but what I've noticed is, with the very limited amount of time I've played around with them, is that if the paint's wet, they don't take. So you're going to wait until your layers have dried off. John uses soft pastel. Okay, that's interesting. Is that an oil-based soft pastel? Because that's what these are. They're called oil pastels, which I don't really understand why, but Sandra says that's just beautiful. I'm going to have a go. Good on you, Sandra. And that's the whole idea, isn't it? Is to see something new and have a go at it. Beverly says wax paper works too. Parchment paper, yep. And Heather says Riot stores have the Mungio. I'll go and check that out, although our Riot store closed. All right. Now, what else will I do to this? I don't know that I'll do any more to this. I'll just take that off. I'll pop it up again at the end, but I'll just take it off for the moment so you can all see the painting. I don't know. What else would we do? Where did that white one go? I'm not entirely sure. I've lost my white. The white one. Break up that reflection a little bit. All right. What other questions do you? Oh, there's the white one. I was going to put in some like white ripples in there, but I've put in some blue ones. So, what other questions do you guys have for me? Because I'm kind of at that point with this where, you know, for a little study, I don't think it needs much more doing to it, to be honest. I think it's something that will give me the basis to do a larger painting from. I think it's a composition that's going to work okay with a little bit more thought. Did kind of like that scrape through there. So I'm not going to do too much more to this, I don't believe. So therefore, let me know what questions you have before we wrap up. And I'll happily answer them for you. I want to keep this sort of like a, you know, like a quite an immediate sort of response to an idea rather than working it much more than what it is now. So I'm going to stop right there, right? Because I think at the moment it's still got a bit of a fresh look and feel to it, and any more done to it might just overwork it. So, I mean, even little studies like this, you could get these framed and sell these if you wanted to. But the important thing is, I think this will be a nice little sort of idea for my new series. But I tore the paper a little bit, but not to worry. When that dries off, that's going to look okay, I reckon. John says just regular soft pastel sticks. Okay, that probably should go over the top of the acrylic once it's dry, I imagine. Colin says, time to take off the tape, best part. Absolutely, Colin. That's one of the reasons why I love working on paper. Beverly, now what would be the best way to frame this on mixed media paper? I think you'd get a frame, you'd have to be framed behind glass being paper. So, you know, you would just get a frame with a backing and just some tape in the back of it would be probably what I'd do, and then put it behind glass. Heather, I like the portrait aspect for this study. Are you going to do any landscape aspect? Well, I did this one as a landscape. Well, sorry, let me change the camera. There we go. I did this one as a landscape, Heather. So I'm playing around with landscape ideas as well. But I think most of the series is going to be that portrait style, because I'm doing sort of riverbanks and I think it sort of translates a little bit better in that style. But I probably will do maybe one really large centerpiece for the collection that will be a landscape size, I'd say. Thank you, Colin. Glad you think it's fantastic. Appreciate that. Thank you, Donald. Appreciate that, mate. Over on YouTube. Linda says she has suppliers, but she's afraid to use them. Well, Linda, don't be. You know, painting, learning to paint and being in the on the journey of becoming an artist requires that you move a lot of paint around. And, you know, if you have a whole lot of ones that don't work, like, you know, this one here, this one's probably going to end up in the bin after I've finished the series. It's not great, right? So I do tons of paintings that aren't that great. A lot of the demos that I do for the Learn to Paint Academy, they're good, but they're not great. But who cares, you know? Like, the only way to get good is to use the paint up, right? Well, get the knowledge you need, and then practice that knowledge by using up the paint. That's the way you actually learn. And then you get to a point where that fear of making mistakes goes, because you get to a point where you know how to fix the mistakes, and then you don't have to worry. Anne says, love it, Rod. Just curious, what does the white highlight on the right-hand side of the tree represent? This one here, in my head, it was a broken tree branch that had fallen off, you know, like a ghost gun sort of thing. But I wasn't really thinking about it, to be honest. I was just making marks. But that's kind of what I guess it would be. Debbie Taylor says, just 3 colours. Cool, nicely done, yeah. And then when you've got your handle on those 3 colours, you then go to what we call more of an advanced split complementary palette, which is where you have a cool and a warm of your 3 primaries. So a cool and a warm blue, cool and a warm red, cool and a warm yellow. So that's the next logical step, right? Gladys says, I'd be tempted to add sunlight. Yeah. Well, I mean, in the finished painting I may do, you know. It sort of represents a bit of light and dark anyway. But this is just a little demo to play around with a composition, and that's what it's for. So yeah, you may play around with light if you want. but it's gonna, I want it to be more on the semi-abstract side, so I'm not really thinking about representational sort of painting as much. Gwen, first time I watched you last week, I watched you do a barn. Terrific. Implemented mixing your colours and attempting a landscape. Terrific. Well done, Gwen. I hope it worked out well. And if you haven't done so, and anyone else watching, make sure you go to this web address here and register for our free painting course. It'll just give you more detail, and there's a couple of paintings there to have a practice at. But good on you for having a go, Gwen. And says, always love the ripping off of the tape. Yeah, me too. I don't know why. I started out, when I first started painting, I was really doing watercolour. And so it was all paper and it was all tape. And that was always my favourite part, was pulling off the tape. Because that little white frame just seems to finish it off in a way that, you know, I don't know how else you would do it. All right. John says, oranges and red look fantastic in this morning's study. Thanks, John. Yeah. And again, I started out by saying having a dominant colour scheme, red and yellow, which obviously the orange is the secondary of those two, and then having accents of the complement colour, which is the blue. Okay. So I'm going to do the whole series in that colour scheme, red and yellow dominating, and the blue as the accent. And part of the reason why I'm doing it is because I paint a lot of landscapes and I get a little bit sick of blue, green, yellow combinations. Just a little bit, but not entirely. So I thought I'd do something a bit more arid and a bit more weathered, you know, more outback Australia kind of thing. So those earthy tones, I wanted to bring those out. Carol says she's inspired. Yes, that's the idea. That's why I do these, right? Marie, which would you recommend, canvas panels or frames? Both. Canvas panels or frames. I'm not entirely sure what you mean, Marie, because I paint on canvas panels all the time, and you can put canvas panels in frames. But you know, I paint on paper, canvas panels, MDF board, stretch canvas, everything. You know, so don't limit yourself to any one thing. I think. Be broad in your approach until you narrow down to a particular voice that represents what you do, is my sort of attitude. Barb says, I love it. Thank you, Barb. Appreciate that. Will the pastels fade or blend over time? That's a really good question, Beverly. I only started using them this week, to be honest, and I don't know. I mean, the ones I've got are cheap Montmartre ones from a $2 shop. They're probably not archival, so if you're talking 100 years, you know, probably will fade, but I did this one earlier in the week, and the colours from the pastels there seem to be pretty solid. So to be honest, I don't know. Sorry. We'll find out. All right. Well, I think we will start to wind up. Jimmy Rogers says, it looks great, and thank you. Cool, Jimmy. Thanks for dropping by, and make sure you check out our other videos and stuff. You feel inspired? That's good. That's good. I love to hear that. You know, that's why I do these. So, fantastic, mate. Good on you. Linda says, we'll paint first thing in the morning and check out the link. Good on you, Linda. Looking forward to it. And come and join our Facebook group. You know, if you go to Facebook and search for Learn to Paint in Oils and Acrylics, and in the group there, you can share up your paintings, and you know, we've got a nice little community starting to develop in our Facebook group, and a lot of people on the live stream here today are in our group and sharing their paintings all the time, and we love to see your work. So for all of you who are new, just go to Facebook and search for Learn to Paint in Oils and Acrylics, and we'd love to see you there as well, hey. And me too, inspired doing Christmas cards. Great idea, Anne. Great idea. Can I use this design? I might make your lower bush an Aussie. You can have a crack at this for sure, yeah. So my policy is anything that I do on Learn to Paint Academy or Learn to Paint TV or share with you on the live stream, feel free to copy it, right? However, anything on Rodmore Art, right, or my website rodmore.art is my own personal work. So I don't want people copying that for obvious reasons. So if I do a little demo like this, even though the intention is for me to go and put it on Rodmore Art, the finished version, then yeah, feel free to copy that. The one we did last week as well. That was from our live stream last week, right? Another study for the series I'm working on. You can copy those from these live streams, but please, I ask, don't go to my Rodmore Art Facebook page unless I've done it on Learn to Paint Academy. Then the finished work I do there is not to be copied. So I hope that makes sense. But yeah, love to see your version of it, Anne. Cool bananas. All right. Well, friends, I think we're heading to a finish up here. Barb says she's loved it. John says there is a spray to go over pastels used mainly. Yeah, that's if the whole thing's in pastels. I'm not sure whether you would need it. I don't know. But yeah, good tip there, John, with a spray. Thank you, Kimoko. Marie says she loved the way it turned out. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with this one, actually. I think it's a nice, bold composition. Definitely make for a nicer, bigger painting. So I could put a bit more detail and so on in there. Well, friends, I think that brings us to the end of another live stream. We'll be back Friday morning, so in 2 days' time, for our coffee chat and Q&A. And that's your chance to ask me any questions about painting or about being a professional artist. So hope to see you Friday morning, same time, and have an awesome day, everyone. And I appreciate you all joining me today. All right, cheers for now.